and I'm the one who sent you the emails about this meeting today. Ian Baxter with the TJPDC is not here today. He is out for a family emergency, and Christine Jacobs, who you also know, is out on vacation. So you're stuck with me, and I'm sorry. So welcome. I think everyone in the room probably and online knows each other. Is that a fair statement? Or should we do introductions?
Yeah, there's only like 5 of us.
All right. All right, so I introduced myself. Anthony, you want to go next?
Sure, I'm Anthony Hall, I'm the director for Blue Ridge Area Coalition for the Homeless.
I'm with the Office of Human Rights in the City of Charlottesville.
I'm Victoria McCullough. I work with Todd in outreach role for the City of Charlottesville Office of Human Rights as well.
All right, and then online, Justin, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hi, I'm Justin West. This is my first time here, so glad we're doing introductions. I'm with Wade Rentals, so we're a property management company, and I'm also very active with the Blue Ridge Apartment Council and Virginia Apartment Management Association.
Excellent. And then Khaki, do you want to go next?
Khaki Dimick, Albemarle County.
And Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm with Piedmont Housing Alliance. I am the landlord engagement specialist with VERB.
And then from Legal Aid?
Hi all, I'm Emily Dreyfus. I'm a community organizer with Legal Aid Justice Center, and I'm currently filling in as the interim ED for the Public Housing Association of Residents. It's good to be here.
Excellent, thank you. I think Dave Norris had joined the meeting online and then dropped off, so he may be back. All right, so the big update that I'm aware of from the state grantor is that our primary contact has changed or is changing at the end of the month. Elizabeth Spock, I believe is her name, is moving on to a different role. She'll still be with DHCD, but she's not going to be a part of the VERP programming anymore. We at the TJPDC submitted the mid-year report earlier this month, and it was approved by DHCD. Some highlights from the report are that 51 households were served. That includes 60 children and 68 adults. 39 primary applicants were currently employed at the time of being helped. Their average cost of rent and utilities was around $1,000, and their average monthly income was around $2,400. And the average amount of legal financial assistance that they received was a little over $3,000. I don't know if the mid-year report was shared with you all. Is that something you all would like to see? Okay, I can send that out to the group because I don't think it contains any confidential information. Are there any questions from the committee members about VERP activities or what you should be doing or what's going on with the program? I don't know that I can answer them, but I can definitely relay an answer.
Would you just explain what time period that report, those data points were from?
Yeah, so this is for January through, I believe, June of this year. So this is for VERP 3.0, which is the most recent implementation grant, which started in January. So that's not a long time period. Other questions?
With the full length of that grant period, the 3.0, you know? The full year?
I think it's a year, yeah.
Okay.
This might be in the update to come, but I was just kind of curious with what it looks like in terms of people who reached out for help and how many actual clients have been enrolled so far.
Yeah, Sarah, do you have that information or?
I know that Dave would. I'm sorry. I don't have it.
Okay, well, here's Dave's joining the meeting right now. Hi, Dave. We were just going through some questions about the mid-year report, and folks wanted to know what sort of clientele you've had so far this year.
Yeah, and I apologize. I have had some technical issues here. So in terms of the folks that we've served as VERT participants, is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah, I was hoping Claudette would be on this call because she could answer more directly, but I can sort of in general terms, I know a lot of the folks, probably a majority at this point of people that we've served with financial assistance have been residents of the Charlottesville Redevelopment Housing Authority. We have a very good working partnership with CRHA to where they are now routinely referring residents to us when they start to fall behind on their rent. And so we can help them get caught up and then help get them connected to financial coaching. So Shimora Cooper, who's one of our financial coaches, has an increasing caseload of primarily CRHA residents, not exclusively, but primarily CRHA residents, helping them to put together a household budget, work on their credit, work on their savings, all that stuff, while Claudette works with them to provide some direct financial assistance, such as rent arrears, which has been by far the biggest demand. So it's yeah, we've had an active caseload. In fact, we're having the opposite problem as we had last year. Last year, we got towards, as you may remember, got towards the end of the year, and we actually had unexpended funds. And so we kind of rushed in the last 2 months of last year to get as much money out the door as we could. This year, we have the opposite problem where Claudette's done such a good job of getting money out the door and serving as many people as she can that we're actually starting to run low on funds. We're going to reallocate some funds in the program budget and from some of the categories where we're not seeing as much demand so that we can free up more resources for rent arrears. Rent arrears is by far the biggest need that we're seeing for financial assistance. But we certainly don't expect to have the same issue we had last year where we're scrambling around at the last minute trying to get money out the door.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thank you. Are there other questions from the group? If not, we can go ahead and move to the PHA check-in. Dave, would you like to get the court navigation update?
Sure. Yeah, we're very pleased as of May of this year to get our formal court navigation program going. Maybe it was April, even April, May, working with the DSA, Charlottesville DSA. He's been doing court navigation on a volunteer basis for, as you all know, for a couple of years now. But we were required by the terms of this year's VERP grant to actually have a formal court navigation component to VERP, where we were actually compensating court navigators for the work they're doing and allowing them to do more of it. And so we've had over 200 people that have they've done outreach with, people that have received eviction notices that are now getting information about eviction prevention resources, getting information about the eviction process itself, encouraging people to show up for court. And then of those, about 40, we've actually provided direct court support to through the court navigation program. The one change that we're seeing, according to Elizabeth Stark, who's sort of coordinating that program for us, the one change we're seeing is, unfortunately, a lot fewer people are actually showing up in court. Her message was, the message that she relayed to us was a lot of people have just given up and they don't really feel like there's much hope. So they're not even bothering showing up for eviction, which is very hard for her and her court navigators to see and to, but they're still plugging away. They have decided to make something of a strategic shift. Previously, they were trying to reach out to anyone and everyone that had gotten an eviction notice and was due for a court date. But they've really decided they want to go sort of deeper with folks and really focus on those neighborhoods that have, and those communities, those rental communities that have the highest eviction rates. And do a little bit deeper work in those communities, to not try to be all things to all people, but to focus their resources on, the 5 or 10 neighborhoods that are evicting the most people. And not only do the court navigation part, they'll continue to do that, but also do a little bit more tenant advocacy, letting tenants know about their rights. So working hand in hand with Gustavo at Legal Aid to try to supplement his time and energies. So that's sort of been a strategic focus. That's just sort of come about in the last month or so. But they're still doing court navigation, just not trying to be all things to all people. So.
Can I add a bit about legal aid involvement?
Sure.
Cool. So we've been focusing on the low-income housing tax credit properties because residents of those properties have some additional protections against eviction. And we have done Know Your Rights workshops, I think at 5 of the low-income tax credit properties, and 1 is in the city and the other 4 are in the county, I believe. And that's been going well, and we're doing some deeper organizing at 2 of those sites now, with probably a 3rd coming online in the next 6 months or so. And we are working really closely with DSA on the broader community education effort, so that we make sure that everybody who's on the docket gets a phone call or a flyering and has some information at least. But I agree, it is really a difficult situation out there, and there is a great sense of hopelessness, a horrible sense of hopelessness that is out there among tenants.
Yeah. And I know one of the things that DSA and Elizabeth and her team have been working on in CACI, and I think they've met with you or spoken with you at least, trying to see if there are any other rental assistance resources that might be, coming down the pike or might be made available. I don't know if CACI, if you can speak to that or.
Well, we have $260,000 that we're very close to being able to open up.
Great.
We really just haven't had the staff to manage an emergency hotline. And so we've been sort of hiring and training folks and getting a process in order. It will be slightly more cumbersome than the one that was set up for Pathways, but the focus will be on rent and utility relief. And the expectation will be that someone has an eviction notice or some part of the eviction process is started, and or a cutoff notice for utilities. And the utilities are easy enough for us to call and make a promissory note and for them to turn it back on. It'll be slightly more complicated with rent. Our finance department takes quite a long time, honestly, to release a check. And so we'll have to do a little bit of negotiating with landlords to see if they can accept an electronic payment or some other method in which they might hold off on proceedings until the check actually arrives there. So there's been a little bit of internal wrangling to try to make that happen. I think it's worth it to do that because I do anticipate that the county will continue to provide some form of emergency relief as a natural part of our budget, which is an important part of this sort of my push for this year.
Great.
We also have some unexpended ARPA money that we're reconciling now to try to identify what promises have been made for using ARPA money in the last year that are not likely going to be fulfilled, and trying to figure out whether we can wrangle some of that money to support this emergency fund. There's a lot of support internally for that, so I think it's a matter of time to get to the yes. But the initial amount that looks like we could try to wrangle would be another 100,000, and then we'll continue to be scavenging any and all available ARPA money that's not been expended in every one of the departments that 3 years ago said we will take it, and is now sort of coming to the end of that process, and they're not able to use as much as they said. So and we'll keep doing that. And then, of course, the budget cycle for fiscal year 25 will start soon enough, and we'll ask for an increased amount going into that year to try to institutionalize this support.
That's terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I know they were also able, not just DSA, but other housing advocates, they were able to get the city to put more money into pathways fund than the city had originally budgeted. So it wasn't as much as they had put in last year, but it's still, you know, some money. So every penny helps.
Keki, I'm just curious if you can enlighten us about why Albemarle didn't stay with the pathways process and continue the collaborative effort.
I mean, it wasn't our choice, Emily. The city, when we first established the Pathways Hotline, it was city, county, United Way and the Community Foundation, right? And so our goal was to just move as much money into the hands of people as possible. And so everybody was in a yes mode at that point, including United Way, which has done just a Herculean task of getting money out the door so fast for us. As that sort of for us, the collective us. I think it's increasingly hard for the hotline to sort of manage the varying scripts for city, county, United Way, particularly as the money starts to titrate down after the sort of big ARPA money, like initial CARES money, and then the ARPA money, and moving to a sort of a more sustainable institutionalized amount. I think it's just a lot of work for the city to take on behalf of the county. And so while United Way continues to be willing to play the role, the county would like to create the muscle internally to funneling and distributing money itself, which I think is a healthy outcome of this process, even though it's taking some time to get there. And for us to establish our own internal process. So it wasn't a contentious divorce. It was amicable, but I think the city was ready to take on its own process without being burdened by us. Which is okay.
All right. Dave, would you like to give any additional updates about VERP activities at PHA?
Yeah, I'd love to have Sarah say a few words about, you know, it's been about a year ago now that actually Emily at one of our meetings said would be great to have a landlord tenant mediation program in place. And we started getting Claudette Green trained as a mediator, and then she ended up shifting roles and became our VERP case manager. But once we hired Sarah to be our landlord engagement specialist, she started that mediation training process and is about 1 week away from finishing now, Sarah? Or you want to give an update on that?
Yeah. Yes, I just have one more training next week, and then I can start doing co-mediations. So basically mediator after that, but I just have to do it with someone who's actually certified. So I actually just talked to the Charlottesville Mediation Center, because they do have someone who I can do the co-mediations with. So it's just going to be a matter of working that out. But yeah, once I can get that, then I can be in the courts on my own and just sit in court. I know Dave had met with was it the county judge?
Both Judge Katara and Judge Sneethern have said once Sarah has her certification with the Virginia Supreme Court, then they will start happily referring people to her for mediations.
Yeah. So it's super exciting. So hopefully, like in the early fall, I'll be able to get started with that. So yeah.
So we're very excited about that. And Sarah's also been working on a renter education program, rights and responsibilities, that she'll be starting to, work with local landlords and property managers and other groups to put that out in the community. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Sarah?
Yeah. So I just put together some PowerPoints, and I'm hoping to be able to do the class maybe at least once a month. But basically it just kind of goes over renters' rights, but also their responsibilities. And the goal is to just present it to tenants, hopefully kind of hooking up with landlords in the area, which I kind of sort of touch base with you, Justin, about that, but trying to mitigate situations before they get out of control. So, talking about what tenants can afford, and, reading the lease and making sure you abide by the lease, to like, let's try and not have situations arise before they get out of hand. So yeah, that's the goal. Hopefully, I'm hoping that we can get the first class up. It'll just be like a webinar, like in September. So yeah.
And Justin, thank you for engaging with us and, helping to, I know in the future and now helping to bring some more landlords to the table, and so we can, as Sarah said, just kind of get out ahead of some of the issues that we see.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a good question, real quick. I was wondering, I'm assuming that a lot of the focus on rental assistance opportunities is, well, wait, can you hear me okay? No, I didn't, okay. I'm assuming that one of the big reasons that folks are seeking this program is for a lack of ability to pay rent. But I was also just wondering, how, I don't know, is there, do you have any information on like how many of the clients that you're working with are actually dealing with that versus it being another issue that's not rent related? Is it like far away rent related issues, or is there a portion that's not related to rent, related to other issues? And is that where mediation can come into, or is mediation across the board for both rent issues and other and non-rent issues?
That's a great question. I think to date, we've mostly been working with tenants who are falling behind on rent, who have fallen behind on rent. Everything okay there?
Knocking my top.
It's Todd's fault.
So that's been certainly the most sort of prominent issue that residents have presented to us upon approaching VERP or being referred to VERP. However, VERP is not just rental assistance. It's not just even about people who are struggling financially. It could be other issues, as you just said, Anthony. And so, and we know there's a lot of reasons why people end up getting an eviction notice or sort of getting into disputes with their landlords. And so we certainly want to, and that's partly why Sarah came up with this renter education program, was to help resolve or address some of those, head them off before they end up becoming, a big issue. So I expect we'll see more of those as we, engage more on that side and on the mediation side. But for now, with the case management and the financial assistance, it's largely been people that are struggling with rent. And, we also help with other financial needs. So we have a little bit of money for transportation, childcare, but the far and above, the one that's presenting more than anything is rental assistance.
And is that also the reason that you're seeing this lack of hope with the court process, is that they don't feel that there's a realistic opportunity for them to get that rental assistance, or for it to be longer term? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is, and Emily, feel free to weigh in from LAJC's perspective, but once the big rental assistance programs kind of dried up, the COVID era programs, at least then there was a lifeline, and now there's a much fewer dollars available for people that have fallen behind. VERP, as I've said 100 times before, it was not designed to be a rental assistance program. It was designed to complement the rental assistance programs that were in place. And but then those funding sources have increasingly gone away. So I think that's a big part of it, is just people who have fallen behind and can't catch up. And Emily, I don't know if that's what you guys are seeing as well, or.
It is, and I think it basically goes down to the rapidly increasing cost of housing locally, and the very slowly increasing wages, especially for people who are in low wage jobs, particularly Black people. Like when you look at the equity of who's getting more salaries, Black people and other people of color are definitely disproportionately feeling the pinch of the housing costs. And it all, really, for me, it goes back to the fact that landlord tenant rights in Virginia are severely skewed toward landlords. So tenants just don't have a lot of rights, and our hands are tied in many situations that come about because of the local economy and lack of affordable housing.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons why, I mean, like Shimora's work on the financial coaching isn't going to solve those, the problem of wages and housing costs and all that, but it's certainly for people who are in the midst of that struggle, helping them to, figure out how to manage their money better, getting them connected to Network to Work and other employment resources so they can increase their incomes, helping them increase their credit score. We know that's a big factor in obtaining and maintaining housing, increasingly so. So that all helps, but it doesn't really get at the underlying systemic issue of high housing costs and low wages that Emily just talked about.
Well, if we need to move on to something else, we can totally do that, but I have another follow-up, if that's okay.
Go for it.
I found it to be interesting that it seems that the landlord or I don't know, I guess maybe the landlord is the right way to say it, maybe not, but that CRHA, it's people at CRHA properties that seem to be the largest users of this program.
Numerically, yes, but we don't just work with CRHA, but that's a big, because they've been a good partner with us and they want to see their residents succeed. So
are those, I guess my interest was, because I'm coming from a place on this issue that I thought was maybe somewhat niche, but it's a lot of clients that have like ongoing rental assistance. And I'm wondering if the clients that you're seeing for the VERT program at CRHA, are they clients in supported units that they're not able to pay their portion of rent? Or is it a different type of situation than I'm thinking about? Because if that is the primary issue, I think that's quite unique and something to, I don't know, it feels more solvable, maybe. That's the main issue so far, but
yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It's a legitimate question. But you may or may not be surprised to know, even in those communities where there is a built-in subsidy or a public housing subsidy or a voucher subsidy, what have you, there's still a lot of people that are struggling to keep up. And so, and thankfully it's not, what we don't usually see at CRHA, at least, are people that are coming in owing 5 or 10,000 or 15,000 in back rent. It's usually much more manageable numbers. Not always, but usually. When somebody comes in and they're 5, 10, 15,000 behind in rent, there's really not a whole lot we can do for them on the rental assistance side, because we are capped in how much rental assistance we can provide. Sometimes we're able to partner like with Pathways or other organizations to cobble together a solution, but sometimes it's at that point, sometimes it's just a matter of helping them sort of find other housing and not end up falling through the cracks in the process. We now have 2 full-time housing navigators on staff with our housing hub. Albemarle County just recently gave us a grant to fund a second full-time housing navigator. And so they do occasionally work with VERT clients who are so far behind that there's really little chance of them preserving their current housing, short of a miracle. And so, but we at least work with them to find something else so they don't end up becoming homeless.
got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Are there any other updates from PHA? Otherwise,
Sarah, anything else that comes to your mind?
I don't think so. No. Yeah.
all right. Next thing on the agenda then is a roundtable from the folks here. Anthony, do you want to go first?
I don't know that I have all that much to share. But I appreciate the update, and I'm not long in this role, but I want to support this program as much as I can. So I know I'm sorry, Ken. Sorry.
What's next for you, Anthony?
The next, you know, to be determined still, actually, to be quite honest with you. If you got any ideas, let me know, David. We do have an interesting potential opportunity that I just wanted to mention. I think the focus is gonna be a little bit not as upstream as this focus of VERT, but we have some money from TJPDC and the county through the home art program, which can be used on short-term rental assistance and utility assistance that we're gonna be submitting an RFP out to the community to apply for, to administer the program. So there's gonna be some money available for that kind of assistance, but usually, you know, BRAC, we focus on trying to help folks get out of homelessness back into housing as opposed, because we do already have a homelessness prevention program. But anyway, I just wanted to mention it there that it might come into this realm of assistance that could be available for this purpose.
All right, Tom, do you want to go next?
Sure, have a few things. Thanks again for the updates. Was wondering, Sarah, in your tenant outreach and landlord outreach, if you would like to consider any of our like fair housing information from the Office of Human Rights. And then probably most of it is focused on Virginia Residential Landlord and Tenant Act rights, because you're working with people who are currently housed and at potential risk for losing housing. Most of the fair housing stuff we see is people who are trying to get housing and not being able to access it or being denied an opportunity. But I don't know, sometimes those things can go hand in hand depending on the situation. I don't know if that would be of interest in kind of maybe rounding out what the outreach that you're doing. So that's one thing. The other question I was gonna ask was about sort of the scope of housing navigation, how that's maybe shifted now that you have two navigators, like whom might we refer there versus who might we refer to the Hill for services through the Haven and housing navigation? Because I think those are, but mostly those are kind of the two places and DHS in the city where there are housing navigators right now. And I'm kind of curious about the comparison of the three different types of housing navigation that's happening across those three organizations.
Yeah, good question. Thanks to Matthew Murphy. He's done a very good job of keeping an open line of communication with the other housing navigators, so we're not competing with each other or duplicating each other's services. You know, we have said from the beginning, we're not trying to, for instance, you mentioned the Haven, we're not trying to duplicate what the Haven does in terms of helping people who are currently experiencing homelessness be able to access housing or shelter for that matter. If we get anybody, and it's not uncommon to get somebody who reaches out to us who is currently experiencing homelessness, typically Matthew will refer them on to the Haven. So we're not, again, trying to compete with or duplicate what they're doing. They have the expertise in that. The grant from the county has really allowed us to zoom in on a pretty specific need, not exclusive to this need, but the county experienced an issue with a lot of voucher holders, a lot of people from the county who were getting vouchers, not being able to access housing, and a surprising number having to turn in their voucher. And you know how frustrating that must be if you wait for years to get to the top of a waiting list for a voucher and then turns out you can't use it. So that was the sort of major issue that presented itself, in addition to county DSS clients who were just struggling finding affordable rental housing. So the county grant, we had somebody in that position for a few months. They ended up taking another job with the city. So Reggie Allen was our county housing navigator, and we just refilled that job 2 weeks ago. So Jen Tall is our new county housing navigator, and she is hitting the ground running. So, so Matthew kind of handles. Jen handles most of our Albemarle County referrals, and Matthew sort of does everything else. But they coordinate with the other housing navigators in the community. So I always tell people, don't just, if it's easiest for you to just refer people to Matthew, he can do the triage and figure out where the best, what the best service for them would be in terms of housing navigation.
Dave, I'm curious, what were the primary reasons people were turning in their vouchers and unable to find housing?
Yeah, so a lot of it had to do with, well, just first and foremost, as Emily said earlier, just the lack of affordable housing, period. And so the competition for any affordable unit is through the roof. So that's an overarching issue. Also, even though discrimination, housing discrimination related to source of income is now technically illegal in Virginia. We've seen landlords that have found ways to get around that and come up with other obstacles. And I'm not saying that's necessarily widespread in the industry, but we have heard examples of that happening. And the other issue is the voucher, the amount of funding available through the voucher is increasingly increasingly insufficient to cover the actual cost of housing. So, with the voucher program, it can only cover rents up to a certain amount. And because of the high cost, increasing cost of housing, the vouchers just aren't cutting it. So those, I would say, the three main issues. And then Kaki, I see you nodding your head if you know of others, or Emily or anybody else.
No, I think that sounds exactly right. And I do think that also we've historically had a policy of only giving people
Right.
a limited period of time to find that housing, even though we know our market is nearly impossible. That's going to change with our admin plan as well. So we provide not only support to help people find it, but also more time to do that. It just doesn't make sense for us to give that opportunity for somebody else to be freshly frustrated, which is essentially what it does, is to recycle those voucher frustration to other people. And there is an opportunity for us to do like micro markets for rent, to identify what the rent, what's it called?
The rent reasonableness?
Rent reasonableness, thank you very much. To identify rent reasonableness rather than on the county as a whole, but to do little micro market climates. It takes more time for us to do that, but I think it will yield additional benefits, first, particularly in the sort of semi-urban ring, that will allow us to go up a little bit. And we have already agreed to fund, I think, at 105%. And so it just means that, fewer vouchers go out the door because we're stealing money, funded vouchers from other places. But I think it's worth doing sort of layering all of those things together to try to increase the number of folks who are able to take advantage of the voucher once we've offered it to them. So.
And so, Dave, when you mention other obstacles, obviously there's very little we can do at this point about what I can only imagine at this juncture is a small private property owner that either is unaware that source of funds is a protected class, or is just willing to stick their neck out there and pretend like they can deny a voucher. I don't know what to do with those people. I don't think any of us do. But the other obstacles is this where property owners are not following HUD guidelines on calculating income, or what kinds of things?
Yeah, I don't think it's as much that. I think it's more like, for instance, we've seen a big increase in the recent years in the application fees, for instance. That's an obstacle that landlords have the ability to assess, and that's a barrier to people who have limited means. Increasing number of landlords who are requiring not only a first month's rent, but a 2 months rent up front. We see that happening. And from a landlord's perspective, I can understand why that gives them some safeguards, but again, it's an obstacle, particularly again for people who have limited means, because that's not typically, or that's not covered by a voucher, the first and second month's rent. What else? Credit scores. So that's been a big one, where again, you can discriminate based on credit scores. You can't discriminate based on source of income. You can discriminate based on credit scores. And so we're seeing landlords increasingly using the credit score, which again is why I go back to the work that Shaimora does as our financial coach to help people increase their credit score. That's oftentimes the most valuable thing we can do for somebody, because it not only opens doors literally for housing, but so many other things. Those are some examples. Todd, I know you deal with a lot of this as well, or Kaki or Emily, but do you want to, Todd, do you have other examples?
Well, you hit the main ones that I've heard. I've certainly seen like it's just a a lack of, rents within the payment standard of vouchers. I've seen a lot of that example. I do have a question that, when we do see those, denials, and if they look fishy, do you refer those to like the Virginia Fair Housing Office if they're in the county, or to us if they're in the city? Do you have a kind of a mechanism for that, just so that if it does look like something that's not one of these sort of proxy barriers, but one of those direct denials, and the landlord is not exempt from the law, based on how many properties they own and so forth, do you have a way to refer those out?
That's a great question. I'll talk to our housing navigators to see what they're doing when they encounter something like that. I don't know if they're automatically referring people, but I'll check on that. I'll follow up on that. So
We'd be happy to help with that piece of it.
great, thank you, Todd.
Sarah, one thing that may be useful in the resources that you're putting together is to disseminate HUD's guidelines for calculating incomes out there in your packet, because that was when source of funds, when the source of funds legislation first came through, that was one of the biggest single things that was causing inconsistency. You had different landlords calculating qualifying income on a voucher holding resident differently. And I believe that's kind of been clarified more or less. And some people may just not know that, or perhaps there's a small portion of people that are willfully miscalculating it, but I bet you're probably looking at more people that just don't know. And if the resident knows, or prospective resident knows, then that's going to make it a lot harder for those to get calculated incorrectly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm writing that down right now. Thank you.
All right. So we were in the middle of a roundtable. Do you have anything else you want to share from the Office of Human Rights? No, okay. So we'll move to folks online. Khaki, do you want to go?
I feel like I've had the opportunity to update everybody through everybody else's updates. Thank you.
All right. Justin.
I wonder whether I might have just round tabled as well. No, I mean, I look forward to working with Sarah and, trying to make more folks in my field aware of some of these resources, because the fact of the matter is a lot of people on our side just aren't. And, I think we can all agree evictions are a negative outcome for everybody. If we're aware of the resources and our customers are aware of the resources, then that's a better world to live in.
Justin, do you want to talk about speaking of which, you were, last time we met, you were putting together a resource packet of some sort for.
Yeah, and to be perfectly honest with you, I have not made a lot of progress on that. But yeah, I mean, so this actually started, I also happen to sit in on the Fifeville anti-displacement group. And one thing that kind of came out of one of our recent meetings was, maybe not a clean resource kit for both property owners / managers and residents. And so I am cobbling together. It sounds like there's probably going to be some crossover with what you're doing too, Sarah. So maybe we need to get on the same page. Because if it's available to those of us, folks in our industry, I think that's a good thing. And I mean, one day we may live in a world where your landlord, for lack of a better word, gives you a set of resources if they ever give you a late letter or something like that. Because as I said before, no one wants to live in a world where there's lots of non-payment of rent. So, I think making sure those resources are clear is a good thing.
Great, thank you.
right. Sarah, Dave, do you have any other PHA items?
We're celebrating the grand opening of our first building at Hindlewood, formerly known as Friendship Court, on August 19th, I believe. But stay tuned for an announcement about that. If you're available, we'd love to have you come and see the first phase. So it's very exciting. It's been years in the process.
Okay. Great. All right, and then Emily.
Congratulations on that. That's great. We're also looking forward to celebrating West Haven Community Day a week from Saturday, August 5th. And the resource fair runs from 10 to 1, but the whole day is packed full of fun. It's a really wonderful community celebration. So you all are invited to come and bring whoever you please to celebrate and enjoy the activities. Lots of good things for kids. Other than that, I think I've said my piece during the other discussions. Thanks.
All right. So we've run through our whole agenda. We are early. I'm happy to give you back almost 40 minutes of your day. The next meeting of this group is tentatively set for October 26th at 2 p.m. That is a Thursday. If you have a conflict, please shoot me or Ian an email and let us know. But I will go ahead and send out a copy of the mid-year VERP report for your reference. Thank you all for attending today.
Thank you.
Thanks for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You all.